So, welcome to day 2 of Epilepsy Week. And as per usual, my name is Irock, and welcome to the intellectual relations of consciousness. So, one might be asking, right, to say, Irock, why this? Yet again, I'll always say, it is because I also get seizures, right? Not cool, not nice, but hey, we are living, right? And I just want to raise this that a lot of people might say you're suffering. You're not really suffering, you are just living with it. And there's like a lot of people who are living with epilepsy that you might not even know. And just remember that even though epilepsy, they say it is a disability, that doesn't mean it's an inability. So you can still do anything and you can still be anything, be it you're still living with the condition, and no one is going to take anything away from you because you are as strong as you think you are. So yeah, today I just want us to go much into detail about the two types of seizures. So you have two types, right? You have your focal seizures, and then you also have your generalized onset seizures, right? And then within that, there's like different categories. So on your focal seizures, then you have two of them. You have two different focal seizures. So the first one is your focal onset aware seizure, meaning in this seizure you are aware of what's happening, right? You can still see everything. You can still experience everything. You even experience yourself through the seizure, meaning you are aware of your environment, you are aware of people around you, you are aware of like everything that is happening, right, within that. And it is a bit different from your second type of a seizure. Now, the second type of your seizure is called focal onset impaired seizure. Now, the difference is the first one, you can experience everything that is happening. And the second one, right, this is where you lose your consciousness, right? And this is where a lot of people actually get to like pass on. Because why? You've lost your consciousness, and other people might mistaken you for like you are okay unless you have like the stiffness or muscle jacking. Then that's when people can actually realize that you are having a seizure attack. But besides that, no one can actually notice anything, right? And by this happening, it is not actually supposed to last for more than 5 minutes, right? That's another thing that we need also to learn and know about, that when we are experiencing these seizures, there should be a time where it is still okay for you to have a seizure. And if it crosses over that, then you really need to call an ambulance, right? Or to be rushed into any medical facility. And the reason is there is a lack of oxygen that is being received by your brain. So if it's more than 5 minutes, then you can as well be brain dead, which is something that you do not want to have. So you have two types of your focal seizures. Then you have your generalized seizures, right? In your generalized seizures, these like are the types of seizures that are widespread and everyone is might not be aware of, right? To an extent, I really need to say that there are people who are living with epilepsy and they are not even aware that they are living with epilepsy. So the first one is absence seizures. Absence seizures, it's where like you are just staring into space. You do not many people actually mistaken it for daydreaming, and yeah, a lot of people might say you are daydreaming, but the actual fact is you are not daydreaming. It just so happens that for 10 seconds you just completely zoom out, right? And it's perfectly normal. You do not lose your consciousness. you are not daydreaming, you are just not physically you're not here, but mentally you are not here, and it's just like that. And yes, epilepsy does affect your muscles, so sometimes it might be that within this 5 to 10 seconds your muscles are just stiffened. And then you also have you'll sometimes have like muscle jacking, or you might have between this 5 to 10 seconds or lip smacking. Others might have your fingers motion, right? So there might be like a bit of a motion within these few seconds. And then you have your atonic seizures. Now, the term atonic simply refers to without tone, meaning this is where like you lose the strength of your muscles. Other people, they'll just have a bit of fainting, right? So you'll just collapse, and for 15 seconds you cannot pick yourself up, you cannot stand, you cannot do anything, and then after 15 seconds you are back to normal and everything is okay, and nothing else is actually being affected. So these might also happen like once or twice, which is something also we're going to talk about on our next point, which is like triggers. Then you have your tonic, and then you have your chronic. Now, chronic means like it's basically the fastening of your muscles. Now, the previous seizure type that we spoke about, it is a seizure where now you have like those weak muscles, right? It's just an attack on your muscles and they just become weak and then you collapse. Now this one, it's very different. So you get that maybe you were walking and then for 15 seconds you literally cannot move. Yes, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, you're just standing there. And I think this might make you realize the danger of it, because you might be crossing a road, and we are living in different countries. In other countries they would wait for you to cross the road. In other countries it's you versus the car, or well, it's you versus the driver of that car. So other people might be like, why are you just standing there? And the most unfortunate part is there is no better way of explaining it to people that this is what's happening. Sometimes you also don't know that it's actually happening to you, and this usually does happen, right? Then they can last for like 20 seconds to up to 2 minutes. That's the sad part. So imagine like your muscles are being stiffened for like 2 minutes and you cannot move or you cannot do anything. Then you have your tonic-clonic seizures. Now, this becomes now a combination, right? Where you have like your rhythmic muscle jacking, and now it gets to be stiffened and then it gets to be loosened at the very same time, right? And it kind of brings some embarrassment to it, because it doesn't only affect your muscles, but there is one muscle in particular that it might affect, which is like your bladder. So yes, at some extent you'd find a person who'd have a seizure, and during that seizure then they'll wet their pants. And yep, so you end up having to pee during a seizure, and it's not because they were pressed or something like that, but it's just simply because your bladder also is being affected by the seizure that you're having. And the last one that we're going to focus on, it's your myoclonic seizure. Now this one, it's a shock-like muscle seizure, meaning you'll be okay, and then the next minute it's like you are just shocked by something and your muscles, they'll start like to feel that shock too. It's pretty much like you're being electrocuted, except that you don't feel any electrocutions in your body, except the shock that cometh with it in your muscles. So those are the different types of seizures. Now, let's talk about triggers. Because a lot of times, seizures don't usually happen by themselves. A thing that one would recommend is for you to have your diary where you'd write down specifically when did the seizure happen, what time of the day, the mood around it, the last meal you ate probably, and all those that I've listed, there might be triggers. So other triggers are internal, other triggers are external. For example, your emotions might be the reason you get triggered. The change of your emotions might be the reason you get triggered. So people might think that if you are sad, you get triggered and then you will have a seizure. Whereas you might also be very, very, very excited, and then unfortunately you get a seizure attack. So that's the first thing, your emotions. Yeah. And the second thing, it's stress. While stress is actually the first thing, the biggest trigger for epilepsy, it's when you are stressed out. So try by all means to have a stress coping mechanism so that you do not get seizures now and then. You do not get them anywhere, because sometimes you might be stressed out and maybe it's like a job interview, then you'll get a seizure attack, you know. So those things, they usually happen. Now, the sleeping issue, right? Other people, you might not be sleeping enough. So if you're not sleeping enough, approximately needs to be 7 hours. At minimum, you need to sleep 7 hours per day. And this 7 hours should be continuous, meaning you shouldn't like have to wake up, do something, and then be busy with something and then go back to sleep. Then no, you need to sleep very, very enough. Like your body needs to rest very, very enough. And then other people, it might be your hormones. So as you're growing up from being a child, and this is also an advice I'm giving to parents, that as your child is growing up from being like a little child and now they're becoming teenagers, that might also trigger. Of which now the most unfortunate trigger is when you are feeling, or not when you're feeling, when you are on your menstrual cycle, right? When you are on that time of the month, the hormonal changes there. It's another thing that might be a trigger to your seizures. And you might ask yourself to say, how does this affect my seizures? And it's also things that we should later be talking about, to say, what is it that triggered it? So now, the other thing, right, it might be your stuff that you're taking. So why do I say stuff that you're taking in? So firstly, it might be your diet. Secondly, it might be dehydration. And then the last thing, it might be the drugs and alcohol that you are taking in. All those things that you are taking in, they might also become an affect, or rather they might also become a trigger to what you are doing. So now, the last thing that I want to talk to you about is, how do I know what triggers my seizures? And how do you know that exactly? So remember that I mentioned a book, a diary, where you write down when did you have a seizure. So you'll have to go back to say, did I take in any high caffeine substance? Did I eat enough? Did I rest enough? Any other thing? So those are the things that you need to write them down so that you might know exactly what is it that triggered you. So that is it for today, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us on this video to discuss more about epilepsy. I just hope you do know that it is not as simple as it should be to talk about epilepsy, especially when you're coming from a community where there's a lot of stigmatization about it. So yes, please do like, subscribe, share, comment, and you might not be the one who's living with epilepsy, but there might be a friend of yours that is living with epilepsy. Might be sibling, might as well be your partner. So yes. So also, if you are the person living with epilepsy and you do not know how to explain it to someone else, these videos might also just work for you. My name is Irock, and this is the Intellectual Relations of Consciousness. Cheers.